66 million years ago, something wiped out 75% of all life on Earth in a matter of days. Science refers to that event as the Cretaceous mass extinction. But that explanation only tells half the story. Because between verse 1 and verse 2 of the first chapter of Genesis, there is an entire world that disappeared. A world inhabited, governed, and destroyed before Adam existed. And the Bible keeps that secret with astonishing precision. There is a creature in the sacred texts that was so perfect, so close to God, that its fall destroyed an entire geological era. It is not the man, it is the being that came before him, the one who ruled this planet when dinosaurs walked the earth. Most people believe that the biblical story begins in Genesis chapter 1, but that is exactly what that gap wants you to think. Before Adam, before the garden, before the 6 days of restoration, there was another living world, complete and ruled by that being. In the book of Ezekiel, chapter 28, verses 12 to 14, God himself describes that being with words that break the silence. You were the seal of perfection, full of wisdom, and complete in beauty. You were in Eden, the garden of God. Your dress was made of precious stones, and the gold, tambourines, and flutes were yours since the day you were created. You were the anointed cherub, protector. I placed you on the holy mountain of God. You walked among the stones of fire. Stop here for a moment. That text does not describe Adam. It was specifically written to describe Lucifer before his fall. This means that Eden was not created for man. It existed long before, and Lucifer was its original inhabitant and administrator. This is a truth that most religious institutions have never openly presented from the pulpit. However, few notice that Lucifer didn't just play music. He was the instrument himself. The Bible says that the work of his tambourines and his flutes was in him. Worship flowed from his being like sound flows from a flute. He could have been the regent of all cosmic worship, the being through whom all of creation expressed praise to God. While other angels worshipped from a distance, Lucifer dwelled on the sacred mountain and knew the voice of the Creator up close. Not by hearsay, not by reference, but by living within that glory every day of their existence since the beginning of time. And here arises the question that nobody asks. When exactly was Lucifer created in relation to the creation of the earth? The Bible answers that in a place where almost no one looks, the book of Job, chapter 38, verses 4 to 7. God asks Job with a voice that thunders from the whirlwind, "Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? When the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God rejoiced with joyful voices." Morning stars, that is the exact title of Lucifer, and that text confirms that he was present when the earth was created. There was a story happening on this planet long before any human being existed to tell it. This confirms what Ezekiel suggests. Lucifer was not just an angel from heaven. He was the administrator of a world prior to Adam, a world full of colossal creatures that science found buried in geological strata and that the Bible knows by name. But before we get to those creatures, we need to understand how that world was destroyed, because it was undoubtedly destroyed. How could someone who knew God so closely turn their back and drag an entire era of creation with them? The answer begins where every great tragedy begins, not in a battle, but within a solitary thought. Every war begins with an idea, and the most devastating war in the history of the universe did not start with a weapon or an army. It started in the most private chamber of the greatest being God created, in a place unseen even by angels. In the book of Isaiah, chapter 14, verses 12 to 14, the Bible records that moment with a precision that sends chills down the spine. How you fell from heaven, O morning star, son of the dawn! You were cut down to the ground, you who weakened the nations. And you said in your heart, I will ascend to heaven, above the stars of God I will raise my throne, and I will be like the Most High. 5 words that forever change the history of the universe. I will be like the Most High. It was not a temptation that came from the outside. It was a choice that was born from within, in the heart of the worship leader. The first sin of the universe was not an act committed with hands. It was a thought nurtured in silence. And that thought became a revolution that shook the foundations of the celestial order to its deepest roots. In the book of Revelation, chapter 12, verses 7 to 9, the Bible records what followed that thought in exact detail. A fierce battle occurred in heaven. Michael and his angels fought the dragon, who battled back with his own angels. But the great dragon was defeated. The ancient serpent, called the devil and Satan, was thrown down to the earth with his hosts. A third of the angels in heaven fell with him, swept away by the pride of the most powerful being they had ever known. The contagion of Lucifer's pride was so devastating that it corrupted a multitude of celestial beings, making them complicit. But here is the gap that most overlook, without stopping at the Gospel of Luke, chapter 10, verse 18. Jesus utters a phrase that stops time. I saw Satan fall from heaven like lightning. This is not a metaphor or poetic figure. This is memory. Jesus was present and saw with his own eyes the exact moment of the fall. The verb used in the original Greek is in the imperfect tense, which indicates a continuous action, a scene that was recorded forever. The Creator witnessed in real time the fall of the most glorious being he had formed and did not take his eyes off that moment. Now comes the connection that no one makes, the one that links theology with geology and sacred history with fossils. When Lucifer was expelled from heaven, he was specifically cast down to earth, over the territory he governed. In 2 Peter chapter 2, verse 4, God cast the angels who sinned directly into the abyss. In the letter of Jude, verse 6, it speaks of the angels who abandoned their own dwelling, their assigned place in creation. They had a physical place, an assigned territory, and that territory was precisely this planet on which we live. Here lies the great lagoon, linking the entire narrative with a coherence that no theological system has fully clarified. In the original Hebrew, Genesis chapter 1, verse 2 says that the earth was without form and void, tohu wabohu in Hebrew. But that Hebrew verb, haya, commonly translated as was, can also, and in this context, must be translated as became. The earth became a shapeless and empty place. It was not how God originally created it. It was what it became after the judgment. The book of Isaiah, chapter 45, verse 18, confirms it with a statement that leaves no room for ambiguous interpretation. God says he formed the earth and made it, establishing it not as chaos, but to be inhabited. In Genesis 1:1, God creates the heavens and earth, but in verse 2, everything is chaos and emptiness. There is a temporal lagoon that holds entire geological eras and millions of years of history, not explicitly narrated in the text. A world was created, it was inhabited, it was ruled by Lucifer, it was destroyed by divine judgment, and then it was restored for Adam. Paleontology has been excavating a destroyed world for 2 centuries, unknowingly reading the Bible in reverse. Because that previous world was full of life, of enormous creatures and ecosystems that no human eye ever beheld. The extinction of the Cretaceous wiped out 75% of all species in a geologically instantaneous period of time. Paleontologists find in the rock a line that scientists call the KPG boundary, and below it lies an entire living world. Dinosaurs of all species, megafauna, marine and terrestrial ecosystems of a complexity that we still do not fully understand. Above that line, absolute silence, the signature of a judgment that erased an era as one erases a page from history. And yet, not all the creatures of that world are foreign to the Bible. Some survived in the pages of the sacred text. In the Book of Job, chapter 40, verses 15 to 24, God speaks to Job about a creature he calls Behemoth with absolute familiarity. Here now is Behemoth, which I made with you. He eats grass like an ox. His tail sways like a cedar. His bones are like bronze. A tail like a cedar. No known modern animal has a tail that can be compared to a tree of such proportions. It's neither the hippopotamus nor the elephant. The anatomical description doesn't match any existing mammal on Earth today. It corresponds with unsettling precision to the great sauropods, the herbivorous dinosaurs with endlessly long necks and tails. The biblical text portrays Behemoth not as mythical or spiritual, but as a real animal created by God. And in the same book, chapter 41, God continues to speak about the Leviathan, a water creature that breathes fire from its jaws. Can you catch the Leviathan with a hook? Will you put a rope on its tongue? From its mouth come torches of fire. Smoke comes out of his nostrils like from a boiling pot. His breath ignites coals, and flames come out of his mouth. This is not decorative poetry. In nature, there are insects like the bombardier beetle that project boiling liquids. On the scale of a colossal reptile, that chemical mechanism could produce exactly the effect that the biblical text describes. The Leviathan is not a monster from folklore. It is a creature that God describes with almost paternal pride in the Book of Job. Job understood, because Job lived in a time when those creatures were still part of the collective memory of humanity. But let's return to the question that changes everything. Why did the sin of an angel destroy the entire physical creation? The beings of that former world made no choices. The Behemoth didn't rebel, and the Leviathan didn't wage war on God. And yet, everything disappeared with them, an entire world swept away by the consequence of its steward's sin. The answer is a principle found throughout the Bible that most people have never linked to fossils. Sin contaminates the domain where it is committed. The territory bears the spiritual mark of its ruler, without exception. When Adam sinned in the garden, God did not only punish man. In Genesis chapter 3, verse 17, he said it very clearly. Cursed is the ground because of you. You will toil for food from it all your life. The fall marked the ground itself. The entire domain was contaminated by the sin of the human administrator, not only the body of man, but also the territory he governed. So, if Adam's sin was enough to curse the earth of the post-Adamic world, what did Lucifer's sin do to his dominion? The same, but on an absolutely incomparable cosmic scale, a judgment of a magnitude that geology still has written in the rock. In the Book of Romans, chapter 8, verse 22, Paul confirms that this pattern of territorial contamination is still active today. All creation groans and suffers like childbirth, still bearing the weight of Adam's fall until now. If today's creation feels Adam's weight, think of the burden the former creation carried with Lucifer as its absolute lord. And now imagine how that trial looked physically from the outside, what an observer would have seen descending upon this planet. In the Book of Ezekiel, chapter 28, verses 17 and 18, God describes the outcome of his judgment on Lucifer with images of fire. I cast you down, ignited a fire within you that consumed you, leaving you as ashes on the ground for all to see. Fire emerging from within, reduction to ashes on the surface of the earth. This is not a metaphor for spiritual punishment. And here appears the gap that science and the Bible share without having agreed at any point in modern history. In the book of Jeremiah, chapter 4, verses 23 to 26, the prophet has a vision and describes it with disturbing precision. I saw the earth was formless and empty. The heavens had no light, and the fertile field was a desert. All its cities were devastated because of the burning fury of the Lord, formless and empty. Tohu wabohu, the exact same words. But here in Jeremiah, the context is absolutely explicit. This is the direct result of a divine judgment, not an original condition. Genesis chapter 1 verse 2 does not describe the starting point of creation. It describes the end point of a catastrophic judgment. The chaos in that verse results from judgment's fire, not the original material God used to create. And then silence came. The earth was shapeless and empty, and there was darkness over the face of the abyss. Absolute darkness. It is not common darkness. It is the kind of darkness that results from the total absence of sunlight from a planet covered in ashes. It is the impact winter that scientists describe as the consequence of any catastrophic event on a planetary scale. The trial had ended, and the world was sealed under the weight of darkness and the silence of what no longer exists. But then something moves. The Spirit of God was moving over the face of the waters. The Hebrew verb used here has a precise meaning. It is the same verb used to describe an eagle hovering attentively over its chicks, protecting them with its outstretched wings. It's not passivity, but active attention and deliberate care. God sees a ruined planet and approaches instead of turning away. And what I would do next would be the boldest act in the entire history of creation, from the beginning to the end of time. Genesis 1 tells of a God who rebuilds what was destroyed, not one who creates from absolute nothingness. Each of the 6 days of creation is God undoing the chaos of judgment layer by layer with the precision of a cosmic surgeon. Separate light from darkness, divide the waters, and let dry land emerge from the dark, lifeless ocean. Puebla the sea fills the air with birds, covers the restored land with life. It is the exact opposite process of destruction. From chaos comes order, from darkness comes light, and from emptiness springs forth abundant life. On the 6th day, the moment comes that changes everything, giving the story a meaning it lacked before. In Genesis chapter 1, verse 26, God speaks in a way that he had not spoken on any of the previous days of creation. And God said, "Let us create man in our image, to have dominion over the sea's fish and all the earth." Mastering that word in the original Hebrew is the word that defines the central mandate of human existence from the beginning. God is giving man dominion over the restored earth, the same dominion that Lucifer corrupted with his cosmic rebellion. Here is the lagoon that many miss because they aren't looking in the right place in the text before them. Adam was not created for a new world without history. He was placed in a restored world that already had memory, scars, and a past. A world that had already been inhabited by colossal creatures, that had already been ruled by the most powerful being in the cosmos. A world that had already been destroyed by the fire of judgment. and that God had specifically rebuilt for this new administrator. Adam was the new administrator of a territory with scars he had not caused, but that he had to learn to govern faithfully. And there is another gap buried in verse 26 that practically no one has explained in a completely satisfactory manner to this day. Let's make that verse, that first-person plural that suddenly appears in the text, was never fully explained. For the first time in creation story, God doesn't create something just by issuing a direct and simple command. Deliberate, consult, as if the creation of man were an act of a radically different weight from everything that had come before. Because Adam was not simply another creature in the long list of creatures, he was God's answer to Lucifer's rebellion. It was the new kind of being that would take dominion over the territory that the fallen angel had corrupted with his sin of pride. And then comes the most intimate moment of the entire Bible, the moment that no other account from any religion has ever matched. In Genesis chapter 2, verse 7, the Lord God formed man from the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. God did not speak Adam into existence as he had spoken to the light, to the fish, to the stars, to the oceans, and to the continents. He bent down, crafted something with his hands, blew on it, and placed something new into the dust that no creature had before. The Nismat Chayim, the breath of life, the personal and non-transferable mark of the Creator, engraved within the human being forever. No dinosaur received that divine breath, no behemoth, no Leviathan, no creature from the previous world was marked in that way. But Satan also knew exactly what Adam represented in the plan that God had been executing since before the beginning of time. Adam had received what Lucifer had lost: dominion, territory, position, and intimacy with the Creator. In Genesis chapter 3, he entered the garden with the same old poison that had already destroyed him, not new or original. "You will be like God," he said to the woman, the same words that he himself had spoken in his own heart up there in glorious heaven. "I will be like the Most High," he had said in that inner chamber where no one but God could hear his deepest thoughts. He didn't invent a new strategy for the garden. He used the poison that had killed him to try to kill the man, and it worked. Adam fell. The dominion was compromised for the second time in the history of this planet, but God already had the next move prepared. A movement planned before Adam existed, before the garden, before the judgment, before the war in heaven. In the first letter of Peter, chapter 1, verse 20, the Bible reveals that Christ was predestined before the foundation of the world. The last Adam, as Paul calls Jesus in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, would not come as an angel or as a mighty king. He would come as a man, live as a man, die as a man, to undo from the inside what Satan had built from the outside. The complete line can now be seen in full. Glorious Lucifer, the war, the destroyed world, the restored earth, Adam created. Fallen Adam, Christ, the last Adam, the resurrection, and in Revelation chapter 21, verse 5, the final seal of the entire narrative. "Behold, I make all things new," the same pattern from beginning to end. Destruction, judgment, restoration, new creation. And now here is what all this means for you, for your personal story within this tale that began before the dinosaurs. You are not an evolutionary accident or a mere cosmic episode. You are the reason an entire world was restored. The same God who saw a ruined, dark planet and said, "Let there be light," is the one who sees you today. God stayed when the first world fell, remained through the second, and is still not finished with his work. That pattern repeats with a consistency that no coincidence can explain. Destruction, judgment, silence, restoration, new life. It is not the first time that God rebuilds on the ruins of something corrupted by the rebellion of a being created for glory. He did it when the first world was destroyed by the judgment on Lucifer, and he did it again after the fall of Adam. And the pattern that this reveals makes this question inevitable. If God restored a planet of ashes, what can he do with a life? The gap theology is not a modern invention to reconcile science and faith. It is anchored in the Hebrew text from the beginning. It is in the prophetic books, in the apostolic letters, in the first century Aramaic Targum, and in the words of Jesus himself. What science calls the KPG extinction and what the Bible refers to as the judgment on Lucifer describe the same event from two angles. One measures it in iridium isotopes and layers of clay. The other records it in prophetic visions and declarations of divine judgment. And both point to the same outcome, a prosperous planet, full of colossal life that suddenly became enveloped in total darkness. The geological stratigraphy clearly shows that boundary beneath the KPG limit, a world in the midst of epic biological activity. Above that line, the most documented extinction in geological history, and then, slowly, a new fauna emerging from the silence. Exactly as the biblical text describes the transition from verse 2 to 3 of Genesis from chaos, the voice that commands the light. Each time the Bible says, "Let there be light," during creation, it signifies the start of a new order from chaos. It is not poetic decoration. It is God's signature on the act of rebuilding what sin and judgment brought to collapse. And that act of reconstruction did not end with Adam nor with Christ. It is still ongoing on this planet and within you. Each generation inherits the scars of the wars it did not start, but it also inherits the promise of the restoration that follows. Adam did not choose to be born into a world with history, but he chose how to govern the territory entrusted to him by the Creator. You didn't choose to be born into a world of decline and spiritual conflict, but you can choose your path from here. If this story resonated with you, subscribe to uncover the mysteries that the sacred history still hides.